All right. So we're on UBC Wi-Fi. I don't know if this thing works. Ba 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 ba. That's our opening song. This is Veteran Guerrilla Radio. I'm Aaron. I have to turn sideways to fit it into this thing. I literally just drove an hour and a half from Chilliwack. Just got into Vancouver here. Flew out of my car. Had to find a building in UBC, which is big, isn't it?
It is big.
It's very big. And I literally just ran in the door. I just punched in the name,
And here you are.
we just made it.
You are.
Okay, is that enough room? Maybe I'll just back up a little bit. The sound's surprisingly really good. These little iPhones, they capture sound really, really good.
Are we on?
Oh yeah, we're on. Whew.
Hey, self-regulation, it works. You're here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for seeing me today. Brian and I are both been stressed out lately. We have a committee coming up in Ottawa.
Yep.
On this Tuesday we fly out, and we're talking mental health. We're talking inpatient facility for 2 days in Ottawa with the Director of Mental Health, Joel Fillion, former executive of the Mental Health Department for Department of National Defense.
Joe Fillion.
He's, what was he? Chief of Staff.
Chief of
Since
Staff.
2007, I believe.
Yep.
And so he just migrated over there just a few months ago. And so he's heading that up. And we'll be meeting with Sid Corshane, who's the new Surgeon General of Mental Health, I think is the title, in Veteran Affairs Canada.
Yep.
And our council has about 8 to a dozen people, half doctors, half veterans, including representation from the Legion, the Anavets, the Aboriginal veterans, and then myself, Brian McKenna, and someone from Send Up the Count named Brian Harding, Mike Blaze, and then, 5 or 6 doctors. I tried getting you in there, David Cool, Greg Passy, and a handful of other doctors, but in the early stages they said no doctors.
That's right.
And then 2 days before we were there in Ottawa, they said 5 doctors, but our doctors. But that's okay. We recently had an opportunity to create a subcommittee on the mental health file specific to the inpatient facility promised within the mandate letter for the Liberal campaign to get into power. So I'm the one that helped get that promise into the election through a few meetings I was privileged to have with General Leslie and Lieutenant Colonel Harjit Sejan of the local BCR regiment, who's had a lot of influence or assistance with your program.
That's right, yes.
And so we're guys with PTSD are going through an incredible challenge right now of trying to actually make something happen in government, which is, there's a glacial pace, there's a very specific way they do things, and there's a lot of influence from the experts in the mental health community across Canada. It's a tall order.
Well, we're ready for tall orders.
Can you tell me now, and tell these people who might not know about you or your program, a little bit about how you got up into the ranks and what led to the Veterans Transition Program?
I'd be happy to.
I'll move you in a bit. Go ahead.
I've been doing working with veterans for about the last 20 years, and it started with interviewing the. Should we look in that?
Yeah, it's just the light behind you. I just realized it was a bit dark. It's all good.
I started my work with talking to 85 and 90-year-old World War II veterans before they died. And the long and short of it was, when I met with them, and they met in groups, and they talked to each other, and they told the stories to each other, which they had never told before about what happened to them and how it had kind of stressed them out when they had come home, and there were no services available back then. And it was a great relief for them to, as a group, to come together because they had served together and to recount critical events and the achievements that they had made in life and how their service had gone. But they gave me their walking orders at the end, and my walking orders, and said, you know, your program that I was developing, they said, is good for us, but this program came 50 years too late. What they're really meaning was, they were saying, get a program, a group-based program to returning vets soon when they come back and not wait as long as they had to, because as Aaron knows and I know, that when you have stress-related injuries, if you don't get that baggage dropped, what you do is you get yourself off base and into trouble a bit. So that I was really pleased to be able to respond to their work, their what they called orders to me, and we promised that we'd have a program in place for the returning veterans, the recent veterans, and we put that together. And to date, we've had over 635 veterans go through our program.
What was the first year?
I think 1999.
Right.
Yeah, 98, 99 is where. So we've been. What are we at now? We're 16 years. The program really got ramped up in the last 10 years.
What did it take to get veterans to trust you guys and sit in a room? What was there something that had to happen the first days of the first running of the first Veterans Transition Program?
Yeah, we had to earn our stripes too, because David Cool and I, he was a physician and I'm a therapist working with trauma people. They didn't trust us right away, but what they did was they began to trust us when Tony Spees, one of the returning vets, pulled together a group of his mates and said, okay, let's test these guys out from the university and see if they know what they're doing. And so he got the troops together and we started with a group, I think, of 6 originally.
And they were Medak pocket
Yeah, they were
veterans?
former Yugoslavia. They were over there.
A handful of them were Medak.
Yeah, some of them were from the Medak, Tony included.
Mm-hmm.
So we got together on that, and we realized that, and this is my view even today going forward, when people serve in they do terms abroad, when they're serving overseas and so on, they get very connected as a working group. And to come home, back to Canada, and be scattered all over the country, you get into isolation and you miss your troops that you're with. Mm-hmm. And I think that in of itself, just coming back to the country, away from your platoon, away that you work together and backed each other, and had a lot of excitement and practice and adventure and challenges, all of a sudden that's gone. And I think that's what contributes to one of the bigger stressors. I don't talk about PTSD too much because people don't understand it's not a helpful term. I think the best term is stress and transition. It's a kind of re-entry difficulty that veterans have. And so we bring them together in groups. And I think the real benefit, Aaron, really, to get going, when you bring people back, what they should do, they don't need to get into treatment right away. What they need to do is get back into a group of connecting back with other veterans who've served with them and rebuild a group and not be in isolation. So that's what we did. That's how we started.
Right. And so as far as the criterion, say it was within a 10-day window, how did that develop?
The program itself, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
The program is 10 days, and it's spread over about 2.5 to 3 months. So there's 4 days where they come together in small groups of 6 to 8, and they rebuild a unit, they rebuild a group, they get connected again around common experiences because they all did serve. And then after we get them together and give them some basic space to be able to learn some regulation techniques and some skills, once they get kind of bonded again and they kind of understand the normalization of what's going on, and we always teach them that a stress reaction to serving, like they experience, is a normal reaction to an abnormal event. It's quite like we normalize that their reactions, their stress reactions, are a normal reaction to what some of them saw, and what they did is pretty difficult and not normal to have to come to encounter it. And so they get some education, some basic skills, and then they go away for 2.5 weeks to try the skills out and to begin to collect their thoughts and get ready to come back again for another 4 days, and that's where we do the hard work. The hard work is when they talk about dropping the baggage, what they really mean is not just telling stories. They work together as a working team of guys, and they go back and they take particular events that are left unfinished for them, or things that are troubling them, comes up in their nightmares, things they left behind, things they wish they hadn't done, and they are in a group of high trust because everyone was there with it, that they've served. They all know what they're doing, and so what they do is they reenact the critical events which are holding them up, and they reenact as a team, and they help one another. So you have somebody in the group who has something stuck that they're carrying with them. It's plaguing them. They may have one of them is called survivor's guilt. Some of them missed a bullet, missed being injured or killed because someone else took it for them. And there's a lot of, because of responsibility they have to each other, some of them really carry a regret about that. They just want to talk about it. So they want to talk about it and get that off their chest. And as they start to do that, what we're able to do is have the other guys, they come on alongside and they will listen to the story, and then they'll say, well, why don't we go back to that time and place through what's called the technique of enactment, and let's talk to your buddy who didn't make it back. What would you say to him? The guys here could help you. And what would you wish that have happened? And what's your promise going forward? So it's not a talking group as much, it's a doing group. And what I'm impressed with in the group in the second 4 days is, as some of the veterans say, is some of the hardest work they've ever done and some of the best work they've done. Why? Is because they're able to start sleeping at night when they are witnessed, when their stories are witnessed, told and understood, and put to rest, kind of put to sleep again. These stories, they don't haunt them nearly as much. So we have things like better sleep happening, fewer nightmares during the nighttime, a little bit less activated because they have to learn regularly in this program because the guys help each other get their lives back. Some of them want to return to service. So although it's called a transition program, majority of the people are transitioning back into civilian life, but some of them actually return to active service. And that is one of the goals of our program, is to include both sets of directions here. And that's really, I know I'm talking a lot, but that's the second 4 days.
That's fine.
And then there's another 3 months where they stay in touch between the 4-day sessions, and then they come back together again. And when they come back together again, the last 2 days is where they regroup, kind of check in with one another, how life is going on the outside, at work, with family, with kids, and how they're supporting one another, sometimes by email, telephone, whatever, backing one another again. And then they set goals for the future. And the last 2 days is focused on, is assessing the gains they've got from the group, targeting the future. What I want to do, what kind of work do I want to do? How do I get back in? I'm no longer isolated anymore. And where can I get going? What do I want to do in life? And some of them move right into new career alignments, new career exploration. But we don't have enough time to do that completely. So what we do is refer them to outside, to some career consultants, because they might want to change their direction in life where they want to go. And that finishes the program. And where possible, we try to make sure they know services they might need after, because it's not a one-shot thing. And what I really wish we had would be a center. And I know Aaron has talked about this, and I've always thought about this a long time ago, is that if we had a center where people could return to for sort of like after-sales service, tune-ups, and I think, yeah, it's like taking the vehicle back into the shop and a bit of repair,
Absolutely.
Replacement, and I think that's a very good working model. But our program, as I said, goes over 3 months, helps them get stabilized, helps them set a direction, and they drop a hell of a lot of baggage. And the best evidence so far that I'm really pleased of is over the 600, and I think it's 630 or 40 that have gone through it. We know we're doing research on this. Even a year and a half later, the depression rates are down, the risk of suicide is down, and their self-esteem is increased, and so is their self-confidence. Now, it's not a fix-all for everyone all the time. There's a screening to get in, of course. You do not have to have a PTSD diagnosis. We're not talking about PTSD. We're talking about people who have a trauma-related stress injury. That's what we're talking about. There you go.
So,
how are we doing?
Yours is 100 hours, 10 days long?
10 days long,
Broken
4
into
days.
3 pieces?
Yeah, 3 pieces, 3 blocks.
So you have a little bit of a recovery period between
Yeah,
them?
recovery.
Because it's like tearing scabs off, right?
No, and I know, and also it's like basic skills training. We
Mhm.
teach them at each of these 3 pods new skills to use once the course is over, and they practice like crazy between the sessions.
Right. Sorry if you don't like the scab tear
Well, no,
description.
it is like
But it's also like the way they describe military training, where you're taking a hot piece of metal and you get it white hot, and then you hammer the hell out of it near the breaking point, then you put it in water, let it cool down for a little while.
That's a very good
And then
metaphor.
you do it again, and then you do it again. And another way of looking at it is re-breaking a bone that wasn't set properly.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that, Aaron, is, as you know, that when you fracture a limb and you have scar tissue where the break is, you're stronger at the place you're broken than you are in the rest of the tissue. And what I like the idea is looking about scar tissue. Scar tissue is very tough. And veterans come back with a lot of psychological scar tissue, so it makes them more resilient, provided they get into the place where they don't stay alone and isolate, where they can help one another get rid of whatever they're carrying around, let that go, and learn from one another how to stay connected. Because I do think isolation is one of the biggest risks that we have around. Just when you come home from a pretty intense tour overseas, you know, it's really tough, but also an adventure, exciting. You're probably in the tightest group you've ever been in your life. You're probably the most connected you've ever been in your life. And all of a sudden you come back and bang, that's all gone. And I think that's a contributing factor to stress in and of itself, and we don't talk about that enough. So I like the idea of, that's why I do a group program. Bring them together, they reconnect, and some of them stay together or connected forever, for years and years after, because they're rebonding.
Yeah, like myself.
Like yourself. Okay.
And so if you have someone who's at that point of the breaking point, maybe they're getting stressed, pushed right to the breaking point at the unit or wherever they're working, and then they're sent home, and they wait weeks or a month till they get a 1 hour session, and they'll get a 1 hour session once a week, and meds maybe. There needs to be a point where there's a foundational, okay, we got to get this guy on the plan, on the program, on here's the things we know about it, and here's what you got to do right off the bat. Because for me, I got into habits, and I had to sit there and try and figure some things out for myself. And like, I'm losing my marbles, so do you think I'm really coming up with good ideas? I didn't get to see you from 2007 until 2010. I heard about the program.
That was 3 years.
I had to wait a whole year still to get into it, so that was 4 to 5 years. Going through about 5, 6 different doctors, because they spin the wheel in the mental health and the military.
Yeah.
So I was worse than Humpty Dumpty with masking tape, and that's why I like to use the word re-break the bone, because it doesn't mean you guys are screwed out there if you didn't get into a great program. What can you say about that?
Well, what I can say is, what we're talking about here is, in the ideal world, it'd be, I think in the ideal world, the best thing we could do is have, when people come back, is get them into belonging to, reconnecting some way or other. Maybe it's recreation, maybe it's social, I don't know, but reconnect with the guys they served with, first off, and just get reconnected again so you don't end up stuck in your basement for 16 months. But it's never too late when you look at trauma, and it is trauma. We've had, when I was doing this program early on, 10 years ago, we had guys that had been, some of them had served in tours before former Yugoslavia. Couple, they had been in Israel, some of them had been in Vietnam, 2 or 3 of them, and it had been years, but they were able to successfully get rid of whatever was plaguing them, even though maybe it was 15, 10 years. But now we find most of the participants coming through our program are getting in much sooner, and that's what we must do. But you know that operational stress injuries like this, they can fester for years, and I learned that from the 85 and 90-year-olds. So,
and can they, through that, not getting things quickly enough, not getting a foundation immediately, that they're waiting so long for these 1 hour sessions that they start to distrust the process and the system that was there to protect them, and then they trust nothing, and then they really start to decline.
Yeah, why I think the individual sessions, like there are lots of well-intentioned services in the country. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is we're missing the kind of what I call group connection service first, and when they're ready, then they could seek individual services, because if they have to wait for one-on-one, and they wait too long, they get cynical, they get depressed, they get angry, and then they withdraw. And it's the same for any of us when we have a stress injury like that. If we're unsatisfied with how we're being responded to, particularly it's mostly men we work with, we tend to get just angry and pissed off and go away. But that's where the risk of depression comes in. And then they lose their connections to their kids, they can lose their connections to their partners. They seem grumpy, and people all misunderstand. But I think it's because we don't understand when they serve in groups overseas in the military, they should be brought back into group in Canada first and get reconnected. It could be recreation, a number of things, telling the stories, regrouping again, and then careful assessment. And then there is a role for one-to-one services after that.
Yeah, once you have a plan.
Once you have a plan. And big thing that Aaron, you talk about is just teaching people how to self-regulate.
Right.
Because a stress injury is going to activate the brain. For any of us that have it, we need to learn techniques for regulation, and that can be taught very soon in groups when people return.
And another thing that I still am not seeing enough of, and if I bring it up, I can really catch a lot of one-on-one doctors that no one's number one thing in approaching PTSD is to let's sit down first and foremost and figure out exactly what your triggers are, and then come up with a handful of 5 each coping mechanisms. And planning around those different sort of triggers. If you're going to do something in a day, you have to have a plan if you're going to have multiple triggers along the way. Like for instance, me having a lousy sleep today, and then I'm going to drive all the way to here, and timings and crowds and traffic and horns and getting into here. I have a lot to deal with. And so it's taken me years of exposure therapy and a lot of different things to get to a point where I could function enough to be able to come here and talk to you right now.
Look at here. He arrives just on time. He drove the 1.5 hour freeway in here, and you're appearing quite regulated. So what techniques did you use coming into the car? I think you're the guy that talked about you do monitor yourself. Mm-hmm. And you're able to bring yourself back into a more regulated zone.
I use classical music.
Classical music? What else did you use?
For the driving.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I make sure I'm not thinking about what I'm going to have to do.
Right.
I like to just focus on driving and dream about other trips on the road I've taken that were good ones when I was young.
Very good. So you're using strategies, aren't you?
And then it's the automatic, the snap reaction things I've had. That's a very specific training right there with the cutoff, getting cut off, or horns, someone doing something very suddenly, slamming on the brakes. My immediate response was to get into a rage.
Of course.
And so I have had to train myself for months in 2013 to immediately go, okay, no, don't do the PTSD reaction. Let's breathe. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Out 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you're using your strategies.
Think about fishing, and I have to go right into a little bit of meditative
visualization
and push it out.
Yep.
And get it down. And I have a Fitbit there. I don't have it on this moment, but I'm watching my heart rate.
I'm watching heart rate. So
and then I also use the M-Wave device through that stage.
You do.
That has the green light, the blue light, and the red light. And you need to be calm and breathing well to be in the blue. And to make it turn green, you actually have to think positively. Have you used an M-Wave before?
No, but I know people that have.
They're just not made very well.
No, they're not. But what I think you're saying, you're using modern engineering.
The device itself.
The device itself. But you're using those. But you have self-techniques, and we try to teach those in the group. And guys like you, Aaron, coming on the group, when we run the group, we have 2 or 3, we call paraprofessionals. Other vets have been through the program.
Like Brian McKenna's been doing it for 3 years.
Brian has been doing it, and they're very helpful. So you're actually applying it today.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to do it on a national scale.
I know you are. And this guy, the reason I like working with Aaron is because he is very clear and helpful to us about what his experience is as the receiver of our program. And he also makes suggestions, recommendations, because I see the program for returning vets to be driven by professionals like us, joined together with other veterans who have been successful in their adjustment, and they kind of are drivers as well. So I see it as a joint effort here, because I think the reactions that they have are very normal reactions to, as I say, pretty abnormal events. You're seeing a kid taken out by an accident when you're in Afghanistan, and you thought, oh, I could have prevented that if I hadn't turned that corner, what could I do? or you see you can't prevent the death of somebody that you thought you could have, and all those things kind of attack our honor and our courage and our commitment to be there for others. And so I think a lot of the stressors that, mostly men, and some women too, but most of our programs are for men, what they bring back is a sense of, oh, I need to get rid of some thoughts in my head about what I ought to have done, and only other guys that have been there can help them do that.
Right. I find it's challenging. There's always at least a dozen people, veterans out there that I've been working on for like a year or two. I've got ones that have been through multiple divorces and have kids scattered all about and are big, rough, tough guys. But then I'll show them like a piece of War in the Mind, the documentary that had some focus on the program, which is War in the Mind. You can turn that on. You can actually see what the inside of a program looks like. And it all. But the thing is, a lot of these big tough guys go, oh, that's not for me, going into a group to talk about feelings, and I'm not ready to cry, you know. It's like they'll go through divorces and have kids spread out all over, but they don't want to come into a program. What more can I do? You can only do so much, right? You can't climb down the hole with them. You have to kind of just go, here's the ladder, and you guys got to climb yourself out. But
I think one thing you can do, and we've had several people, 60% of our guys in the program, of the 640 or 50, 60% of them are there because of things like drive-bys by you guys, or they're recruited by other graduates of our programs. And you see, what can you do? Is I've seen some of our graduates, they will just be relentless and keep showing up with somebody who they know is struggling and say, I need you to come, you've got to come, and they'll be quite direct. Why don't you come and meet the person who's running the program? So I think it's still the veterans that are your best bet to get other veterans in. Also, I would say, when you said about this, the anxiety about spilling your guts. Now, what that means is, guys in our group don't cry. We would never say we cry. They just release a lot. And they like the term, they release a lot. And so it's releasing they're doing. Well, if all I have to do is remind them, if you keep that shit inside you, what you're doing is activating your kind of the neural psych system. It's like driving with one foot in the brake and one on the gas. And you never just get to have your feet on the gas or on the brakes, but you have one in each. That beats the shit out of, to use part of my language, but it beats the shit out of the arterial system, the cardiovascular system, your hormonal system. And so only when you can let the anxiety and the fears out, that you get strong again. And I know it's paradoxical, but I'm impressed with the guys that say, when they are successful in our program, they would say reenacting a really tough part, which brings in a lot of emotion, a lot of reaction. They say it's harder than any job they had to do on their mission overseas. They actually think it's more difficult, it's the hardest work they've ever done. And what I would say to them, the other guys say, well, veterans are never afraid of hard work, and they'll push each other. And they say, I know you don't want to do it, but you got to do it. And I think I like your idea, is I kind of have to re-break the bones sometimes to set them so they heal correctly. So
get on a good first track over it. You're like not born again Christian. I don't want to use that term, but just like you're starting like a brand new person. It's a new day now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a reconstruction of yourself in a new way, because staying stuck is not healthy. As you know that, those of you watching and listening. And so, what I'm impressed with, most of the people who serve overseas or in missions abroad, they got incredible strength, transferable skills coming back to Canada. And when I work with people in the labor market, in the business world, they say, if you hire a vet, you get one of the most competent and disciplined workers you'll ever get, and they have multiple skills. And so, but they can't get into the world of work and a new career until they can let go of and get the management of the self back in place. Yeah. And that's what we do. I guess we're saying is try to help people recalibrate, get the anxiety levels down so they can function really well and be successful.
Right. You know, there's something that's not in any program in Canada.
What's that?
Black humor.
No, black humor.
There should be a
There
component of a program that is solely, and you have to have a specialist to do this, because black humor, you have to be a veteran already to do this, right? Yeah. Like, doing advocacy with our court case, 4 or 5 years now, trying to go on TV and you want people to listen to you, you kind of have to smile and talk about
Yeah,
suicide
yeah,
and
yeah.
how the government's doing all this. And like when we're overseas, something horrible just happened, and you got to keep going. And then you'll like your friend just died, and you like that bastard. I'm never getting that $20 back from that
That's right.
poker game the
Yes,
other night.
or he owes me big time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big component, and I don't think anyone's given it any thought. If you get a comedian in there and a part of
Well,
a program for 3 days, and you have like a stand-up comedy workshop.
Well, okay, now on that point, I don't think that's a bad idea because they use black humor all the time in our groups when they're on their own hanging out together.
Yeah.
But I think that black humor is a part of the culture, and they know the culture. They know the black humor, and it can be actually quite rehabilitative for them.
Right.
It's just that the mainstream clinicians are offended by it because they're kind of brought up in an environment where they're taught not to do that. So you have polar opposites. But
Yeah.
we got quite used to it. In fact, I would say one of the risks for me doing this work, when I come home, my family says I'm swearing using fuck a lot all the time, and it lasts for about 2 days after. Like I said, that's fucking awesome. Somebody does something really good at home, and it could be you have visitors over, and all of a sudden they say, "Where have you been? Like you seem to be really full of energy, and your language reflects it." But I think that's because sometimes that language can only say what's really going on, even for non-military people.
Mm-hmm. When was the last time you saw a funny movie? Is it I'm having a hard time finding humor these days? Like we're living in a pretty. I'm not getting enough humor in my life.
No. Okay.
These days.
But
when Robin Williams went away,
yes,
that broke my heart.
Yeah.
We need more humor.
I agree.
And I think we need more humor in PTSD treatment. I think it can be really break through to that skin where you're got this guy, he's too tough and too proud to cry. Well, let's laugh.
Yeah.
And
Let's
then
laugh
maybe we'll
first.
get,
Yeah,
then eventually we're going to get over to there
Exactly.
too, because we got to go there.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with you.
Right.
Yeah. So I think understanding the culture, the military culture, is essential for Canadian services, whether it's in the Veteran Affairs or the Department of National Defence or whatever. They have to understand the culture that you people live in, and that's what I've been doing the last 20 years. I've been in training, I guess, and I really respect your culture, and I understand it. And I'm not the only one. Several of all the people I train are learning how to give the services you need in your cultural way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And group is the way you do it.
I should see. You're supposed to, with Facebook Live, make sure that people feel engaged here, and I actually didn't check in with people at the beginning. Judith Bailey says it's very informative, and that person saying yes, that's true. Oh yeah, I just want to see if anyone. Hey, if anyone has a question for Dr. Marv, please ask one, because we could just we like the sounds of our voices, and we could just talk for hours here. But
Did they ask it on text?
Yeah, see right here, they have questions, they can ask questions or just say hello.
Yeah.
Brian McKenna, he's, I almost couldn't do it today myself.
But you're here.
I had to do it.
That's what I said about you guys being so disciplined.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I was planning on doing one every day this week, and then next week in Ottawa and Toronto doing several, and then taking a month off, but I do not have the battery power, because we, as it is, have to deal with these committees for 2 days, and
so
what
what would you like these people to know about what you're going to be doing in Ottawa? Because you're kind of a leader here in this, even though you got other things in life to do. What do you, do they know what you hope to achieve?
The big challenge is that in the last 40 years, our government's been shutting down federal responsibility for healthcare.
Yes, that's right.
Specifically in our case with veterans hospitals. Right. Yep. St. Anne's just closed a few months ago. And that was technically the last one that was handed over to the Quebec government. When I asked for an inpatient facility, I didn't know, and I really still don't care, if their attitude is we no longer want to support and fund physical places to treat people. My attitude is for the Canadian Armed Forces to buy into this and to actually send people, there has to be that buy-in. And subsequently, the person going into that program has to be sent there by their leadership. And that's part of the confidence and trust and bond that gets broken in our system, that what I went through and so many others have gone through. And then, of course, also Veteran Affairs has to buy into it, and then subsequently the academic and doctors in
Well,
the community.
I want to say, though, one of the advocates
So-
you may have in Ottawa is
Yeah.
Harjit Sejan.
Absolutely.
Spoke to me at the, in December after we did a presentation of our program, and he said, keep me informed. D&D is interested in this, is what he said, not just VAC, because he's interested in getting the men and the women, those that wish to, get back in, continue to work. Let's get them back.
Yeah, because if we can catch somebody
Early on. you have a
right
much-
after tour,
Yep.
if I can get a Fitbit, if I could get M-Wave to
Yes.
take my advice and make a physical device that can be carried around anywhere rather than it be this little ear clip thing and the $3 little earbuds you get when you're on an airplane and they charge $200 for it. If they would spend some proper money to make a real piece of kit there that can give me some metrics at the end of the day where I can go look on my phone and holy cow, my heart rate went really high when I had to go into the unit. When I had to go in front of the warrant, that certain person I don't necessarily like at the unit, holy cow, I'm seeing all these big red lines, or when I'm driving and I drove overseas and I had that big incident, and you're seeing this heart rate stuff, and then with the M-Wave, it monitors your nervous system.
Yeah.
So there's something in that too. The program with the M-Wave, it's like a meditation thing, and you want to make this perfect wave where you're breathing in and out and you're getting your heart rate to all work in unison, and then you're thinking positively, then the thing will turn green.
Oh, okay.
But this is something they could be using to track people when they're coming back from tour. And also it'd be forcing people to stay into account for themselves to make sure they're meditating or doing yoga, learning to regulate, doing the things so that they don't get to the breaking point.
So that's a recommendation that D&D, that's one area they could start feeding in.
Well, I told their head of mental health to try working on that, and I don't get any response or feedback back. And so I'm hoping they're going off and actually working on a little thing like that to track it. When they see someone's not doing well, then we need to have a physical place to send them before they break, and then they're going to save a lot of money. Because PTSD treating me now, 10 years later, is expensive.
Exactly. We actually have a proposal in before D&D right now based on your initiative and ours, which I think we're running together.
They will
and we're
run
just
together.
waiting to hear back, and I'm going to be meeting the minister on the 20th of September in Ottawa, both ministers of VAC and D&D, and going to continue to push it. And I think we need to, in the country, have about 3 sites, this is my view, that what I would call a Center for Stabilization, Monitoring, and Reconnecting first. Upon coming back. You know, in the old days, I remember working with the veterans from the peacekeeper group. They re-entered the country through Cyprus or something. Well, I think you could re-enter Canada in one of these 3 centers of stabilization, focus, and regrouping in 3 parts of the country, so that people, right away when they come home, they just don't scatter, but they get in and they rebuild a connection, and then they would go home, but they would learn the strategies like the M-Wave, they'd learn regulation techniques.
Yoga, meditation,
all those things. I
swimming,
think that's,
fishing.
oh yeah, I think they'd be
maybe
much
work with some dogs or some horses through
everything,
the program.
yep, and get them right on and say, this is your new equipment. And so I really have come to that place. It's just not because you and Brian have been wanting to do that. I came to that by listening, and I just came back from Israel. And with their veterans, they may try to make a big attempt to, soon after they service, get them back into a group, take them out of the country, take them to another location if they can, and rebuild the group first. As a way to reduce the risks, and we don't do that here, but we have resources to do that, and we ought to. But that's my advice.
The first idea was decompression, so that was going to Cyprus and party your face off and have some fun with the guys. So
that's
getting to a new level of what it could be or should be.
Aaron, it's like a new Cyprus concept.
A
very serious. I call it reconnection, restabilization, and regrouping.
Absolutely.
And we could do that, and there are facilities and sites across this country that I think could be probably with some political will.
There has to be buy-in.
There has to be buy-in, but I think what I'll be doing is, why don't you give us some support to do what they call a pilot group? Let's create one, and let's evaluate it, And let's have the evaluation by the people who use it as well as others.
Yeah, like some seesaw folks who are very hard-edged
Yeah.
people who want to stay in.
Yeah, and I think also.
They're gonna do the program because
Yes.
they don't want to get messed up. If they can learn how to breathe better during a fight by
Yeah.
learning it out in a farm somewhere,
Yes.
patting a horse,
Yep.
talking to someone like you.
Doesn't matter. It's like assess them when they come back as what are the best way for them to get into regulation, because it's a normal reaction that you're going to be activated beyond anything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And so explain to them it's going to happen, and this is what you can do if it happens. And a bit of self-care there can go a long ways until they got into another program if they wanted.
And so, could the biggest damage be going on tour and not getting the sleep through the traumatic periods, where you're not getting the REM, which is the processing?
That's right.
People
Yeah.
aren't processing, so you have this clutter of unprocessed.
Yeah.
So going into a facility, we could have sleep studying.
Absolutely, you could have sleep
You
study.
get 5-10 of those rooms going.
You could, and I would say you spare no money on the kind of sleep comfort zones so people go into deep sleep, because the sleep deprivation is one of the main stressors to the human body is not being able to sleep, and that's one of the things associated with an overactivated
And they got
trauma.
those float tanks too.
Yeah.
What do you think of those? The floating tanks. You're in the salty water and it's in the pitch black and you just float.
Well, I think if you think about that, just floating in the water, you're being held up.
Mm-hmm.
You're being held up. The body doesn't have to. It gives the body a break. It gives it a recreational break.
I still haven't done it.
Well, that's a very good thing. I was just in the Dead Sea, and you get to float there. So
Yeah.
there's nothing quite like being lifted. And so I think many possibilities are there to regulate people.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So there's
So-
sleep.
There's sleep, there's breathing, like don't underestimate using a regular breathing, 1, 2, 3, hold it, let go, 1, 2, 3, hold it, let go. In again, 1, 2, 3, in, hold it, let go. 1, 2, 3, hold it, and let go. As you do that, even if you do that 3 times, that's 3 times 3, the carbon dioxide oxygen exchange starts to shift, triggering a minor relaxation response.
And it can snap you out of it.
Yes, it can. It brings a sign of regulation, slowing the heartbeat a bit. You talked about humor and things that are positive in life. That also is a way to reduce a speedy heartbeat. They're finding that, as well as tactile stuff. There's many things that will bring you back into a regulated zone. But you have to be disciplined and use them yourself. And I'm not going to try to teach that to you people on this situation, because it's not very respectful of what we're doing here to you people. But there are really good techniques for how to just stay regulated. And we're not talking about getting rid of the injury fully. We're talking about managing it.
Right. And again, it's buy-in.
Yep.
Someone, like, I don't need to breathe like that, or you know what to do, or yoga,
Well, what about just
meditation. Well, I'm not going to sit there and...
Okay, I'll give you one other one that guys who are a bit sensitive about the feely stuff it's called Jacobson relaxation. What you do is you tighten all the major muscles in your body, push your feet straight out, make 2 fists, and pull your cheek and jaw back as hard as you can, and hold it, and count to 3 again. And let go. And as you let go, the muscles go from constriction to relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
You start to feel the body relax. So you're going to do this with me, Aaron. Do the next one. Do this. Put your feet out. Tighten your fist and push down your toes as hard as you can. And the chest muscles, tighten them. Hold it. And 1, 2, 3, let go. And breathe.
That's going to the head injury issue.
Well, then yes. So then,
It's making me dizzy.
well, then you just sit there, and I'll say that if you've had, as he's saying, a physical injury related to the head, could make you dizzy or whatever, but if you don't have that, it's called the Jacobson method of relaxation. You can go online on Google and look up Jacobson body relaxation. What you use is the contraction of the muscles in the relaxation as a way to activate the relaxation response.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to sleep at night with that. If you're really activated, just do 4 or 5 of those times 3. count to 3 every time you tighten the muscles, let go, and you'll start to feel the body relax. And that's what I do a lot with first responders or people when they're on the road and they're a passenger in a car or whatever, they get activated, they can do that because they're not holding the wheel. If they're holding the wheel, they can use a breathing technique.
Awesome. So, let's see if there's any questions here.
Okay.
Let me see. You guys got any questions? Hi, Tracy Kerr. How are you doing? How's Billy? Say hi to everybody. Tracy Kerr, her husband Billy Kerr, he got blown up in 2008 and he lost his legs and his arm.
Right.
Have you guys ever connected with Billy?
I haven't connected with Billy, no.
This would be a great program for him.
Yes, it'd be great. Well, the program's available through, there's other programs starting in 5 provinces now.
And hey, guess what? The screen just suddenly went right to my main page on the iPhone, and I tried putting it back on, and it said it was still counting numbers, but we couldn't get to anybody. So we have like 5-10 minutes left, so we just wanted to, I'll merge these together and make it look nice on YouTube later, these 2 separate videos. So how can you...
Well, I was saying to you over the years that I've been doing this, the very best thing you can do is not only text and email one another or whatever you do, but nothing beats a conversation, a non-bullshit conversation with somebody who you know is dealing with what you're dealing with, and you can help one another enormously just by talking about it to another person. And it doesn't have to, it's not therapy, it's just keeping out of isolating yourself because your mind plays games. And listening to Aaron here talking is a way of reaching out of yourself. And I'm just impressed that you tuned in, you have your own show like this to make connections. That's really healthy. But the biggest risk is isolating, because that's when you head down into depression, medicating, and then ultimately not wanting to come back. And we don't want to lose anybody, ever.
No, absolutely.
You're too important to us.
Yeah. All right. Personal issues sometimes conflict with PTSD. Can you talk to that?
What's that?
I don't understand what you're saying, Shamu. Personal issues sometimes conflate with PTSD.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Can you talk to that?
Well, the question is, personal issues can sometimes conflate with your experience of the trauma, and I totally agree with that. It's same as finances. If you're out of money, or you're in a relationship where you're feeling you're not being heard or understood, or you're being bullied, you feel emotionally bullied, that will just escalate the activation level of the trauma reaction. And when I say the traumatic reaction is usually felt in the body. Remember, trauma is not talked into us, and it can't always be talked out of it. You have to move and start doing things, and that's what we like to do in the group. But just recognizing what are the personal issues that are interfering. Is there any way that you can, what we call, boundary yourself from those issues? That is, can you just separate yourself away from people who activate you or trigger you? If that's what I sometimes recommend. You just have to cut out and say, I just need to back away from being with that person because for whatever reason, I'm having a reaction. It's activating my system. So without talking to you personally, I don't think I could be making very good suggestions and useful ones until I knew your situation. But just saying to another person that I can't deal with this now, I'm in a reaction mode, is not a sissy thing to do, because reacting to a trauma isn't something that you want to do. Your body kicks in, you get triggered, and you can't think straight. So I usually say to somebody, I'm having a reaction, I just need some time out. And that's what I would do to people if you care about them, and it's in your personal life. The most respectful thing you can say is, I need to back away from being in this connection right now. I just need time, because something's taken over from me. I really can't control that. You cannot control some of the nervous system reactions until you get back into regulation.
It takes time.
And it simply takes time, and you can learn to do it.
And there are other things you can use to kind of calm yourself through that process, like a little bit of, well, that's what I use. I know you can't necessarily say that, but
well,
I will.
You can medicate, you can say it.
Hey, if anyone has questions, now's the time, because this is a long, bloody drive down here, and I didn't even get any gas money from any of you. So, Barry Westholm's one of the sergeant major who helped stand up the Joint Personal Support Units,
Okay.
the JPSUs.
Yes.
I went before it was SPHL.
I think it changed, yeah.
And he was not happy with the way they were stood up, and so he spoke out in the last 4 years and has helped to cause some big change
Yes.
in how the JPSUs are. He's in Ottawa, and hopefully, Barry, I get to see you in Ottawa and we can do a show.
Yes.
He's got a nice place up the Ottawa River.
Good for you, Barry, taking action. That's what you're trained to do. And if you guys don't get your voices, people don't know. It's your voices that help educate us.
Oh, here we go. Barry has a question. The military spends an enormous amount of time, effort, and money transitioning a civilian to a soldier. Should there be an equal amount of effort transitioning a soldier back to a civilian? I'd say yeah.
You say what?
I'd say yeah.
Well, I think the answer is yes, because we have a moral responsibility in this country to give what I call, what I used to jokingly call after-sales services. If we have people who are going to serve for us in a military context, they deserve as much support coming back for the work they've done for us, because we voted them in to do that, that it should be about equal. And I think we are not shy in asking for large amounts of money to help people, nor should we, because it's our constitutional responsibility living in this country.
And treating PTSD and the way it's being treated currently is very, very expensive.
Yes, it is. It's expensive,
So
but
if we can do something preventative, then maybe it won't be as expensive.
well, exactly.
People stay in.
Stay in. So we now have to start putting pressure, and I'll do my part with the Department of National Defense as well. As Veteran Affairs is starting to come around and support our program, give us some money, and we're going to be meeting them again. And now
Yep.
I'd like to see DND kick in to the preventive role.
All right, well, I don't see anyone else asking question. Terje Alkmo, he's from Finland or Norway.
Yeah, what's he say?
He's a veteran. He's
Wow.
someone I've been following for quite a few years. I see him going hunting over there on the other side of the planet. Very cool guy. He's always here. Here's Jordan Irvine just joined in.
Hey,
We know
Jordan,
him.
yeah.
We know that
Jordan
guy.
Jordan is one of the guys that really is a great backer of the program, and he's a success story lots of ways, because he's got another career, and he was a real boon to our program.
He decided that he needed help before it became a big problem.
Yes, he did. He
That's-
jumped. He knew.
That's how success stories
yeah,
happen.
that's how
You
success-
have to do something
Yeah.
before. If you know you're starting to get, if your mom, you come home from a tour and mom goes, "You don't look right," well, you better do something
That's right.
before you burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And then you end up like me,
Yes.
trying to claw your way back.
We need more guys like
relevance.
We need guys like here. The more that you come on board and get a louder voice, then maybe some action will happen. Because when the veterans speak up, at least in my world, we're going to Ottawa where the veterans are performing a play written
on September 20th.
On September the 20th, when they appear and they create the stories, they perform the issues. They're taken more seriously than we as psychologists and doctors speak up.
Absolutely, that's the
So
Man
that's
Art
your-
Project.
The Man Art Action Project. It's veterans who are just brave as hell. They're out there, they've written the play, they're performing it before all the members of the House on the 20th.
At the center block.
At the Center Block in the Commonwealth Room right after question period.
And who have they done that show in front of? In international stage?
Yeah, this show is the one that we took to the UK, to the Canadian High Commission, and we did 4 or 5 performances internationally, and one of the people who came for the show was Prince Harry, because he was interested in the psychological injuries of war. He was quite taken by our program and had a lot of questions and talked to the guys a lot about it, and he's quite supportive.
Right on. Have you engaged the federal government to place your ideas on the strategic federal stage through VAC? Have you engaged the federal government to place your ideas on the strategic federal stage through VAC? That's from Barry.
From Barry. We have made representation to VAC through the Veterans Transition Network, and that's Mike Dadson and Oliver Thorne. They are in continual contact with them, and we're going to meet the minister, I think, this month in Surrey, the Minister of Veteran Affairs. We'll keep pushing. because it's all of our jobs. We're in this together. This isn't a separate initiative by any one group. It's because you're our citizens of this country. You are the people who are looked up to be kind of models for a lot of young men and young women in the country. And so you're a very vital resource to us in Canada. And if the injuries occur, let's help get repair to these injuries, and let's move forward.
On a wrap-up note, me and Brian right now, we're scared to death that we've done all this effort to get a conversation going with the government to have an inpatient facility, and that then they're going to turn it into a political football, or some MP's going to run off with it. We have one out there right now who seems to think they have it all together, and I have the place for it, and without ever talking to any of the veteran community that we know very well, including yourselves and several other doctors. Me and Brian are really worried right now that it's just going to, and that happens. That's the way the government works. However, we're not going to go away that easy.
Well, I think you may be worried, and when they say that, what's worry? Fear is just another level of awareness that, yeah, you should be concerned, but I think we've heard your voices, and I think some of us can be allies to what you're doing, and it just means more of us have to carry your message. You guys were kind of the pioneers. You kicked it off. You're showing a lot of integrity, a lot of care and commitment, but some of the rest of us are getting hooked into your message, and I would say to you, I wouldn't use the term inpatient facility anymore, because the word patient, I would say, there needs to be a center. There needs to be a center for stabilization, rehabilitation, and development back to success. I wouldn't even use the word patient. I think that veterans coming back...
I have a name for it.
What's that?
It's called reboot. Because everyone says, we need a boot camp for getting out of the Army or for learning how to deal with it. Yeah. And then it's like rebreaking the bone or rebooting a computer. Great. So it's a good name.
Okay, so when I go to Ottawa, I'm going to either say, we need a center for rebooting or refirement.
Yeah.
Refirement.
We need the reboot program.
You need the reboot program.
And then when they go, well, what the heck's that? Well, we'll go talk to this guy and you.
Yep, and I would talk that up because I think it's essential. Mm-hmm. It's not because you and Brian are calling for it only. I've come to that position having worked with these guys for close to 20 years. There needs to be what I call the Stabilization Advancement Center, and we call it a Reboot Center. And I'll stand behind that.
Have you talked to many other doctors about it?
Yep. And I'll be talking to more.
Outstanding.
Yep. We'll keep going.
We could keep talking for an hour here. If you guys had more questions, we could keep going, but hell, I got to drive another hour and a half all the way back home now. Yeah,
it's been good talking to you, Aaron, and I'll carry your message, your interest from you and your group forward, because I'm going to be meeting some of these people in government.
Thank you, sir. And I'll probably be with you on the 20th of September.
You bet.
So, everybody, this is our growing library. The Veterans Guerrilla Radio episodes is a growing library so that you understand advocacy and about what's really going on in the veteran community and not just a media soundbite. We're giving you the full story of every layer and angle and corner of what's going on for veterans across Canada. Myself and Brian McKenna are going to keep going until we can't go anymore on this, and we hope it will be something used in future down the road where someone gets out of the military and maybe they don't like the way they've been treated on issues and they go, well, what the heck do I do? Well, someone somewhere hopefully will go, well, have a look at VGR, all those shows, because that will give you a real sense of what's happened before and where it's gone since. And another thing is we can't do this advocacy stuff forever because my brain's getting a little bit fried from doing it. And so it's also, I'm setting up to pass the torch on to one of you, to hopefully a dozen of you. Yeah. I'm hoping this is something that it's like that old Revlon commercial where it's the ladies talking about makeup, and I told two friends, and I told two friends, and so on and so on. So please, so on and so on. I need more people like me out there, okay? Yeah. VGR guys, I love you, and we'll talk to you soon. And Friday we'll let you know who's on the show Tuesday. I love you guys. Bye. Bye-bye.